Awesome, Dan. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. I am actually very excited for this one because as someone who is an artist and in the world of sales, you've been able to combine both of them together for the art of selling. So I want to say thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, Jermaine, it's a real pleasure. I know we had a great conversation a few weeks ago when we first met one another. So, I'm really excited about our conversation.
Now, you have years, decades worth of experience in this world of sales. And I know most people, they have a certain connotation with the word sales, but I feel like you've been able to craft something very unique to where not only are you improving people's sales processes and systems by 25%, but it's like you're doing this whole transformation with people. Now, before I dive into that, I kind of want to know, how did you get into this world of sales and why did you even decide to go that route?
Well, I mean, when people talk to me, they know that I'm an amiable personality, but also very analytical. And in order to answer that question, I have to go back in time to when I was a child. Back then, I was very gregarious. I used to walk up to people all the time. Hi, I'm Danny Hollis. Hi, I'm Danny Hollis. And then, I had a newspaper route, if people remember what those were. I had many customers. I left their newspaper on the front porch, so all they had to do was open up the door. So I had great relationships with them. And those same customers became clients of mine throughout the year where I would shovel their driveway, rake their leaves, wash their car. So I was one of those few, like 9 or 10 year olds with this metal cash box with lots of money in it. So I think the entrepreneurial spirit and the work ethic really goes back to that point in time. But if we flash forward a little bit after graduating from college, majoring in history and anthropology, I got into sales and spent about 20 plus years primarily in media sales, working in print and then radio and then television and film. And throughout that entire time, I submit this to you humbly, but many of my clients recognized something in me and asked me if I could spend time with their salespeople. And that kind of became a regular thing over time. I probably did it over 200 times in 20 years. And so, about somewhere around 2013, I decided to leave that current profession, which I enjoyed very much in television and film, and start my own business. So, I went from this to this and, jumped into the deep end of the pool, took the dollies off, and haven't looked back. Once the word got out amongst the 20 plus year book of business with folks that I work with, once they found out that this was what I would be doing, a lot of people were like, come on in, let's talk. And it just kind of took off from there. And really, it started out as the quintessential sales training, and it morphed into coaching, helping with business development, helping my clients close deals, even helping them self-publish books. So I wear a lot of hats, but my primary hat is as a sales trainer and coach. And there's a real difference between training and coaching. Training is
Yes.
more information that you get, those best practices, and coaching is taking those best practices and using them and applying them. So, if I work with a client for a couple of days and they have all these aha moments and gather all these pearls of wisdom, once I disappear, they go back to their old habits in 3 weeks. So to have a long-term relationship with them from a coaching perspective is very valuable and helps a lot. So that's just a quick little.
I love that. And a lot of times people don't understand everyone is in the business of sales. I don't care who you are, that's just a pill to swallow, but that's okay at the end of the day. So before I pull back that onion you just shared, help us define the word sales. Like, how do you define the word sales or selling at the end of the day?
Yeah, you're right, though. I mean, especially someone that has a business, there's an element of selling to it. All successful business people need the proper tools. Tools can include your business card, your media kit, your social media platforms, your website, things of that nature. They need systems for success. This is how we do things. It's tried and true. This is what we've been doing for decades. If you follow this, you'll be successful. And then they need the ability to sell, which is to convince people that their product or service is worth investing in. When people ask me, what business are you in, I like to say that I'm in the persuasion business.
Mm.
And if you look up the definition of persuasion, persuasion means the transfer of confidence. So many people go into sales because they think they can make a lot of money or maybe earn autonomy or get more time off and things of that nature. And it's really the greatest of professions. The reason why people don't go into sales is because primarily because of rejection. They fear that word no, that so to speak. But that's really where I come in. It's helping them do the heavy lifting. It's sharing those best practices, the do's, the don'ts. If I can just pick one word, I think that exemplifies what I bring to the table. It's the word inspire.
I like that. And I think as more people, especially because I think sales now has become a lot more glamorous and also a sought out, I would say, industry and for people to get into just because of the flexibility, especially for doing remote sales, the in-person aspect as well too. But you do have that uncapped, hopefully, potential to then not just make as much as you want, but to take that craft to whatever you want as well. That's the reason why I love sales, even though I never really thought I was going to enjoy sales, because in my mind, I didn't process it as sales. I just processed it as like communication and the exchange of, right? People are like, yo, you're just good at talking to people. You have the gift of the gab. How much do you think of sales goes into having that gift of the gab versus it is actually something you have to train? It's something you have to develop.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the people that I work with, there's probably 1,001 things that we go over when you look at the art of
Mhm.
selling. It really is an art. One of those, of course, is the ability to be a good listener. There's something called the 80 rule. And when you're with a prospect or client, you really should be listening 80% of the time. And that's valuable because while they're talking, you're taking in really important information. You're going to surprise the prospect because most salespeople that come in talk too much, they have diarrhea of the mouth, and the prospect is thinking, when is this person going to get out of my office? So if you can really work on being a Jedi Knight at becoming a good listener, that's going to be very powerful. And then at the end of your meeting, if you're able to repeat everything they shared with you, that shows that you heard them, that shows that you were listening, that just helps develop that positive relationship in the hopes that you might be working together. So absolutely, the gift of gab is a good thing. Being able to relate to people, you want to come across as a trusted advisor. Trust is everything. People buy from people that they like, people buy from people that they trust. And that's why when you meet with somebody, it's so important, especially in the beginning, to focus on what I call the bonding and rapport, or searching for levels of commonality with people. They might have money, they might have a need or a pain point and a willingness to spend money to solve the pain point, but they're trying to determine whether or not you're the guy when you show up. So that bonding really helps lower that little imaginary wall so that hopefully you can get into a serious conversation with them. What is a serious conversation? Well, they're willing to talk about their business. They're willing to talk about their challenges. They're willing to listen to what you can bring to the table to hopefully solve some of those challenges that they have.
I like that. And I know, so I did door to door. It was like my last, well, not last, but one of the major arcs in my sales training slash career. And if you've never done door to door, that is probably one of the most, I would say, boot camped version of learning sales for sure. But I had a lot of success, and the people that were also in the same company, they were like, how are you getting people to say yes so quickly? And it was that rapport building that you're talking about. I was like, you can fake rapport, but like you have to genuinely be curious about people and understanding them and then wanting to solve a problem. Now, you said there's like 1,001 different ways that you've kind of trained people. Do you find it often that sales people who are in sales and or wanting to learn sales, they just genuinely don't have that curiosity and or want to help them? Or what's that like conflict that's happening there? Because I feel like more often than not, that's typically where people are going.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing you can do if you really want to be successful in sales as a profession is you want to help people. We all want to make money. Money is not evil. It's the love of money, like Daffy Duck. I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm a happy miser. Money can help solve a lot of things. Again, we want that autonomy, that time off, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, if you truly want to help people, then you will be successful, much more successful than someone that's just a mercenary going in there for the kill, just
Yeah.
to make money. I can tell you that the majority of the folks that I work with bring me in for different reasons. The most obvious reason is that their sales teams are struggling
Hmm.
in many different ways. Another one is that they're social sellers, so they're good at getting meetings and making friendships and stuff like that, but they're not closing anything. There's no
Mhm.
business development. They might believe in continued education, so they'll bring in an outside source just to kind of stoke the fires. Or maybe they've plateaued. They believe, they're a $20 million company and they know they could be a $40 million company, and they just need some positive change, a spark, if you will. So those are the primary reasons that people bring me in. As far as 1,001 things, the majority of companies, when they hire people, it's like, here's a book, here's a CD, here's a DVD, pat on the head, go get them, Tiger.
Yeah.
They might be good at teaching them the product knowledge or
Yeah.
specifically what the service is, but what they're not necessarily doing is teaching them the art of selling. And, if I had a little bit of a timeline, that starts with being prepared. Preparation is everything. Whether you're picking up the phone on a first time call, knocking on a door, taking a first time meeting, presenting a proposal, handling objections. There's so many things you need to prepare for. Then you've got to fill up that pipeline all the time. You can't rely on, your 5 best clients because of attrition and things like that. So you always have to keep filling up that pipeline. You've got to qualify people before you meet with them. And then when you finally meet with them, again, there's the bonding and rapport. There's a level of commonality that you have. There's the ability to be genuinely interested in them, genuinely curious. If you really want to be interested in somebody, you got to be interested, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, again, it's the handling of the objections. It's understanding body language, the personality types that we have. Oh, excuse me a
We
second.
got special guests on the show.
Yeah, this is my wife Jan, and this is one of the foremen on the here at the Magic of Selling. We just got 6 new chicks. Got
Congratulations.
to the chickens that we have already, and they're beautiful little guys. This guy's only about a day and a half old here. We've named them after
Really?
the Flintstones. So we have 6 of them. So we've got Fred and Barney, Wilma and Batty, and I think this is Bam.
Yeah, it's Bam Bam.
Yeah.
I love that.
I heard when I was coming in, I heard you say about objections, and I like to say chickens don't give a cluck. So they don't give a cluck about objections. They don't give a cluck about not being, responsive from their potential client. They just keep on pecking.
That is very true.
Just gonna keep on.
Thanks for the surprise, huh?
I love that. That was great.
Oh,
My sweatshirt has a pocket,
there
and I
we
just
go.
put them in there. So
Okay. And keep them nice and warm. That's incredible. I love that so much.
I'll be training those little guys soon on more egg production. So in about 9 months, once they grow up a little bit more. But
I
yeah,
love, I love that. That's amazing. And with that, right? So there's 3 core pillars specifically that you really harp on, right? So it's take more meetings, close more deals, build long-term relationships, and that's what I'm hearing throughout this process. And some people can't get over the fact of sales, quote unquote, is a volumes game. It's a numbers game. But in those numbers, you can reduce it by those relationships you build so that you're able to, I would say, it's a tough part because you have some people that are saying like, "Hey, get in front of more people," but sometimes when you get in front of more people, you lose that connection. How do you balance that? Like, I go back to an example. I did door to door, and I had half the volume amount of doors, but double the amount of revenue than other people, and they were like, "How are you? How are you doing less door knocking than me, but you're making more money?" And I was just like, because when I get in front of someone, I'm building a relationship and then they immediately take me to someone else. So I don't get in front of as many people, but the duration of time I'm with them is impactful to then get them over the line. So is there a balance, that art of science, science of art? That's what you're kind of getting at?
well, when you look at the history, I'm a big history nut, and you
I
look at the
applaud you because
history.
I'm a math and science person.
You don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been, and history repeats itself all the time. Those are 2 of the famous reasons why history is a good thing. And I don't just turn the computer on. I want to know how it works and who invented it and all
Mhm.
that fun stuff. I'm just curious. But at the end of the day, to answer your question, the old school mentality going back to, let's say the 1940s, 1950s, the death of a salesman, Willy Loman type
Yeah.
character, it's not as important it is as far as quantity.
Mhm.
It's about quality. So, if you're expected to make, let's say you're working inside sales and they're telling you to make 50 calls a day, but you only made 20, but out of those 20 calls, 15 of them were unbelievably quality calls. That's so much more important. If they tell you that the expectations are to spend 15 minutes with each prospect and you're doing a half hour, but you're closing business,
Hmm.
that person should be left alone. They're having success, and that's really what's working for them. At the end of the day, it's always about quality over quantity. That changed. I think that went out the window a long time ago. And let's face it, no matter what you do in life, no matter where you work, specifically we're talking about sales as the profession, if you can make yourself valuable, that's
Yes.
the key. For example, when I worked in radio once upon a time in my life for a decade and change, my primary responsibility was to sell airtime, and then
Mhm.
eventually got into sales management in other areas. I wrote commercials, helped produce commercials, had a radio program, did a lot of different things, but my main function was as a salesperson. So a great tip for your listeners is when you get hired somewhere, the goal is to try to make yourself extremely valuable, not at just what you do. Learn what everyone else does. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. Are you a football guy?
Yes and no. I'm not like a fanatic, but I did play football growing up and I do enjoy watching it. I'm more of like I love the skill set of football versus like football itself.
Gotcha. So I use sports and I use war and all the typical analogies when telling a story to try to address a point. But when we talk about being valuable, think of someone that's in college that's all pro. They're a lineman, big
Hmm.
beefy guy, 320, 6'5", just
Yep.
crushes at every game. And now imagine they're looking at drafting him, and we got a draft coming up soon in the NFL.
Hmm.
They're talking top 10, you know. Everybody needs a great offensive lineman. It's
Yeah.
probably the second most important position behind the quarterback. You got to protect that guy. You got to keep him on the field. And now imagine you have the ability to play left tackle, right tackle, jump into the center position. You can do all of these different things well versus just excelling at one position.
Hmm.
That's why you're going to get drafted in the first round. That's why you might be a top 10 pick. That's why you get that big, fat, juicy contract up front, etc. And it's the same thing with what we do. Once you
Yeah.
get into a profession, or let's say somebody's going to hire you and you've got 15 years of experience under your belt, it's not just your ability to sell, but you have all of these other things that you bring to the table. And then once you get hired, learn what everybody does so you can be a utility player and help out in many areas. You almost want to be irreplaceable, you know?
Correct.
That's really one of the goals, is to try to make yourself irreplaceable.
Yeah, that was a valuable lesson I learned a long time ago is be irreplaceable and be undeniable in what you do. So it's like if something occurs, your name should be the solution. They're like Dan, like sales is messing up. We need Dan. Like contact him. Don't care what's going on. We need him in our process to figure out what's going on. Now, you help people to scale really quickly out of those three pillars, which one do you feel is most common that people are struggling when they're looking at their sales process and their teams? Is it the fact just like their volume isn't there or they're not genuinely building those relationships? Which one you see? I mean, I know all three is very important, but which one do you see commonly people are struggling?
Well, there's really three types of people that I work with when I'm in a situation. Let's say, I work in person and I also work
Hmm.
virtually. I prefer in person because of that
Same.
interaction and that eye contact and the body language and just that ability to inspire, which you could also do virtually, but there's nothing beats in person.
Yeah.
Dichotomy of the room, you have the newbies, people that are
Hmm.
newer to the profession, maybe a year and under.
Hmm.
Then you have what we call the seasoned veterans. These are people that might have 25, 30 plus years of experience, otherwise known as the grayback gorillas, right? And then you have everyone in between, right? And I think the number one challenge for salespeople at the end of the day, if they were doing a survey and there was 25 choices, it's probably going to be the ability to close deals.
Yeah.
You know, they're the social sellers. They're gregarious. They bond. They get into good conversations. They get people to open up. They do everything. They put together a killer proposal. They do all of these different things, but just that ability to actually wrap it up and close the deal. I think that's the number one area that they struggle in. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a few others. There's like a 1B and a 1C, but
correct.
that's probably the top one.
I'm happy that you said that because a few years ago, I was listening, I think, to a guy named Daniel. I think it was Daniel G. He's in the sales space as well, too. And he talked about the fact that there's a difference between you being a salesman and being a closer. And it's like a salesman is just tells the information. They present the opportunity. A closer is the person who helps that individual gets past the not just get past the finish line of getting the deal done, but then through the finish line, which is a big difference as well too. That means like they are bought in on the program, on the service, and they're taking action with it. And I'm happy that you mentioned that because I feel like in sales, typically it is a reflection of the person. So it's like, hey, if you are the type of person who's hesitant to purchase things, invest into yourself, when you go for the close, you're bringing that same hesitancy because you won't even be sold yourself, right? Do you find typically sales is just the reflection of the person, the character, and the development? So that's what makes it hard for some people to then get others over the line?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a fine line between being likable or being cocky. You never want to
Yeah.
cross that line. And again, you're trying to be that trusted advisor where they're thinking in their mind, wow, this Jermaine, he really understands the craft. He's a world-class listener. He's asked me these fantastic questions. I can really relate to that. I love his product and the samples that he showed me. I really think this can help us go to the promised land. Now, all of these things are going in their minds, and you've got to recognize those buying signals as well. You can't just keep going through your presentation. Once when they say something like, "All right, let me ask you a question. If we were going to work with you, walk me through the steps. Like, how long would it take? What would be the expectations? Things like that."
Yeah.
That's when you need to be Fred Flintstone and put your feet down on the car and just stop dead in your
True.
tracks. You don't need to keep on your, hour-long presentation
Correct.
and then kind of corral them, if you will. The best salespeople don't do not sell. That sounds weird, doesn't it? The
I'm about to say,
best.
yeah, explain that for me.
Well, you have a system that works. So if your system and what you do and how you act and what you say is so good, at the end of your meeting, they're going to ask you about next steps, about what should I do or what can I do, versus needing to look right at them and say, what do you think? Do you want to move forward? That type of thing. One
Yeah.
of the things I like to do when I'm in a sales situation with a prospect is at the very end of the meeting, I like to talk about everything they shared with me, which shows that it shows that I heard them and I listened to them. And then I'll say something like my four things that my top clients look for and expect are boom, 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 boom. And
I
in their
love that.
mind, they're thinking, well, I would want to be like that.
Yeah.
And that opens the door for them to say, okay, what do I need to do to get started or walk me through the process or something like that versus me having to say, hey, Jermaine, do you want to work with me? Do you want to move forward? That type of thing. So you have to work at that, but it's very important to understand that. If you have a system for success and an ability to persuade people, I used that word before, they're probably going to say something to you near the end about how do we move this forward? What do we got to do to, you know, next steps? Obviously, you'll get into budget and things like that, but that's what you're trying to do. You hit a home run if you say something like that to you near the end.
That is so true. And there's a couple things that stand out to where your framing in this is great. And being able to frame like the ideal type of clients or the best clients, people want to resonate with that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's funny. I love relating dating. sales and dating together, right? I just think they go so hand in hand with one another. But I remember a guy telling me he would do that. He would take sales concepts into his dating life. And whenever he would be attracted to a specific woman, he would do the same thing. He's like, oh, my best relationships, they've been this way, or like typically we would do this, or they would be interested in these things. And he would see the person he's talking to start to change because they're trying to relate because they want to be that best ideal like partner. And I think it's funny when you look at those social cues in sales and talking to people, you can see that shift. But you have to be aware. You have to look, you have to listen, you have to use all these senses. But I think it also goes back to understanding what is the clear depiction of who you do want to work with and or the ideal client, which I think oftentimes some people just don't know. So they don't even know who they're selling to, who they should be selling to, which then makes it a little bit murky through the process.
Yeah, I you made me think of two things. One about with the dating, with selling, I preach win-win where both parties win. They both leave a deal and both feel like they weren't taken advantage of and they're happy. So,
Hmm.
you can definitely take your sales career into your dating career. Obviously if you're not married yet and you're looking for the right person in your life, but hopefully it's a win-win scenario. No one's taking advantage of anybody else.
Correct.
The second part of what you shared, a moment ago, it escaped my mind. I'm still thinking about what you said about dating, but what was the second part again?
I know that for people to be able to utilize all their senses, meaning like you have
Okay.
to be observant and not observant in the sense of looking for where to strike, but more, I say, is how do you utilize information that's there and or not there?
Right. And that's right. And you have to be a detective. Think of yourself as a detective. You're looking for clues. Even before you meet with somebody, you're researching their LinkedIn profile, you're on their website, maybe you can find some white papers on their industry. And then when you show up, even if you walk in their office and you see things on the walls, you're looking for all of these clues so that you can perhaps mirror them or be a chameleon. And I think within a couple of minutes, you should be able to tell what type of personality they have.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I teach people is the amiable, the expressive, the type A driver, the analytical, the introvert, the extrovert, the omnivert, feel, felt, found, mirroring, being a chameleon. All of these things are clues. And if you want to persuade somebody and transfer confidence from yourself to them, it really helps if you are an expert on those areas. Body language, right? That's the biggest one of all. Not just the words that we use and our tonality, but body language is huge. So there's so many things going on, and if you've got many years under your belt understanding all of that, you're going to be a lot more successful than.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. And there, you said a lot, which takes a lot, like those concepts of mirroring, which some people are like, oh, you're using tactics, you're manipulating me. And I think people have this struggle between manipulation and persuasion, influence in this world. It's like if you're utilizing sales or your sales ability for quote unquote evil, or bad, okay, yeah, you're manipulating. But if I'm utilizing this skill set to help you make a decision you are already wanting to make, I'm just helping you, influence you, and persuading you. Do you find there is that balance to where it's like better?
I would
Yeah.
replace the word manipulation with the need to be convinced. So you're
Okay.
not manipulating them, you're convincing them. And what you're convincing them of is that they need change.
Yes.
They need change in their organization, positive change. We got to work on the mindset, things like that. So I totally understand what you're saying, but again, it's just trying to change their behaviors so that they're more successful at what they do.
Got you. And do you think sales is mostly a mental game or is it more a tactical game?
It's all the above. I know that David Sandler from Sandler Training fame, one of his sayings was, which I love, sales is a Broadway show performed by a psychiatrist.
Hmm.
And when you break it down, sales is a Broadway show. It's almost like Shakespeare said, life is a stage and we're all players on it.
That's true.
So there's so much going on. Like if you film two people in a meeting, with the eye contact and the body language and the gestures, it's amazing. If you filmed it and slowed it down and studied it, And then the part about performed by a psychiatrist is the mindset. It's all of that stuff going on, understanding the type of personality they have. If I had $1 for every time a prospect or a client said to me, Dan, I can't believe we've been together for 1 hour and I can't believe I'm sharing with you my entire life story,
Yes.
I'd be retired 50 years ago. And that's just God blessed me with the ability to connect with people,
Mhm.
and come across as that trusted advisor, trusted person. Sometimes on sales calls, there's moments, there's times where we're not talking about selling at all. We're talking about life. And I think that's a big part of who I am and how I relate to people. Obviously, we're going to stay on topic and whatnot, but
Correct.
there's a lot more going on than just selling and just sales. We're human beings, and you want people to feel better about themselves and better about their profession and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is this concept that you're talking about is the people who just stay on script versus people who understand the framework and the ultimate journey and path through like interacting with someone. And is that how you is that one of the ways you help like C players become B players to then B players become superstars is understanding these blocks and what they should be doing slash having conversations with versus staying in a scripted format? Or do you find people just have a hard time coming out of this script and just being people to then service one another?
Yeah, I mean, the only time I ever use the word script
Yeah.
typically is when somebody starts with a new company and there's something new
Mm,
to
that's
sell,
fair.
or maybe they just got out of college and this is their first rodeo. And obviously a script is very important in the beginning. At the same time, you don't want to come across as sounding like someone that's reading off a script, like if you're on the telephone. It's so obvious to point that out. The goal is to eventually memorize and internalize that so you don't need a script. You might have a 3x5 card with a couple of bullet points with some things that you never want to forget to talk about, but eventually you want to come across as someone that's really just having a conversation.
Hmm.
Facts tell, but stories sell.
Yeah.
People love to hear stories, and especially if they can picture themselves as the hero within the story. And that can happen on a first time phone call. It can happen on a first time meeting. It certainly happens a lot when you have speaking engagements and things like that.
Right.
So, again, the script is important only in the beginning with a new profession or a new person. After that, to your point, you just got to be human.
Yeah.
If you're going to trust me, there's a reason why you would trust me. I've earned that right. It might be after the second meeting, who knows, but that's what we're trying to do. We don't want to come across as Count Dracula, here, I'm here to take your money, right? You want them to know that you believe in them, you believe in helping them, whatever it might be. Good guys do finish first, believe it or not. And if here's another very important tip. But the most successful salespeople in the world are the best at getting referrals and word of
Mhm.
mouth, but they've earned it. So I actually have a full day class just on that one word, referrals,
Yeah.
and helping them become great at getting and giving referrals. So, but again, that doesn't happen overnight, and you earn that right. So, just really
Yeah.
important for people to understand that. Most salespeople, believe it or not, are afraid to ask for a referral, which boggles my mind. But that's
Yeah, I definitely want to harp on that. But backtracking a little bit, I typically tell people you want to look at it like a dance. You have to understand certain movement
right.
patterns, which is kind of the script. But once you know the 1, 2 steps, well, now you have the ability to utilize those in the whole room and move. So like you
Yeah.
now get to dance, but while adding your own kind of creativity. And I know in one of your core pillars, like having creativity, improving as well is very, very key in like your methodologies as well. But
Yeah. I mean, what you just said, at the end of the day, I don't consider myself someone who's playing checkers. I consider
mhm.
myself someone who plays chess. So you might say this, which might cause me to say that. Or I might say this, which might cause you to say that, which causes me to say this. So, it's almost like a cowboy. That's the root word of cowboy.
Yeah.
They're rounding up the cows and bringing them into the pen. In essence, that's kind of what we're doing when we're with a prospect. We're trying to build this narrative and this story that we have the better mousetrap and we can truly help them and they can trust us and we're going to get it done. And
Hmm.
hopefully that could lead to a long-term, lifetime raving fan relationship. And then if that happens, then next thing you know, you're referring each other back and forth and things of that
Yeah.
nature. But your analogy of a dance is true.
Mhm.
Each person has a role and whatnot. So um,
I like
it's a,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You mentioning the referrals, I think there's an aspect to it, correct me if I'm wrong. It's not just the listening part when you're in a conversation with someone, but the importance of asking the right questions. And I think when people do hesitate in going for the referral is because they're asking maybe people that they could work with versus like, hey, who else do you know that could benefit from something like this that you just went through? So it's like more of a solution oriented that they would provide value to this person. How important is it really asking those questions, those key questions, versus just like, I don't say selfishly asking a question for themselves? I butchered the way I wanted to ask you that
Yeah,
question.
no, that's fine. I mean, there's a time to ask for a referral. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's not typically in a first time meeting. You've never met someone before, unless the meeting ended where they said, this was great. I can see how this could be a huge fit for our organization. However, we're going through some massive change here, but I want you to reach back to me in Q2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they're throwing rose petals at your feet even on that first meeting, then you might ask them for a referral if it's crafted in such a way, and you might earn that right because it was such a good meeting that you had. But typically, when it comes to the world of referrals, and again, this is something else that I teach, there's reactive and there's proactive.
Hmm.
The reactive referral's easy. That's when you say to me, hey, Dan, one of my best friends owns 6 car dealerships, and I've talked about you, and they really need help. And he's expecting your call, right? So I react to what you said. So that's a
Gotcha.
reactive referral. It's easy. I love to teach being proactive, and that's the ability to ask people for referrals, even if they're not giving them to you. Carnegie Institute did a study years ago which said that 90% of clients would give us a referral if we only asked, but only 10% of us salespeople ever do.
Yeah.
And the reason why salespeople don't is because they're afraid of rejection or they don't want to come across as being piggy or desperate or not successful. So they don't ask. And the number one rule is after your client compliments you, that opens up the door to ask them for a referral. It's the perfect moment. And they're usually going to be more than happy to help you out. And you don't want to make it difficult for them when they say, what would be a good referral for you? You don't want to say, oh, anyone.
Yeah.
You
No.
know, you want to be very specific, like, someone in manufacturing, someone in IT, that type of thing. So the takeaway on this part of our conversation is just practice and work
Yeah.
hard at becoming really good at getting referrals and giving referrals. I promise you, I don't promise a lot, but I promise you, your sales will go up big time if
That
you
is
can
so true.
at the referral part of the business.
I love that. And it's interesting. You made a comment to where like salespeople are hesitant to go and ask for the referral, but they already closed that client. So it's like you're not hesitant on selling because you got the client that you got success. So why are you now hesitant to ask for the referral? It's the same thing. It's the principles of
I
ABCs.
think
What are we doing?
sometimes it's just the fear of rejection,
Okay.
but I think sometimes ego gets in the way because again, they don't want the prospect to think that they're desperate for business or something like that. It's all very silly, you know. So it's a subject I love to dive very deep into, and it's one of the biggest takeaways of all, and it's game changing. So
Fair
put your
enough.
referral thinking cap on.
Awesome. I'm kind of curious. I know you started off very young. You saw solutions and you saw problems, or at least opportunities, which I tell people like look for those. If there's not a problem, is there a way you can create an opportunity or an opportunity to be made and then provide that solution? But I would guess you've had your head like you've had hiccups throughout the process, right? Like most salespeople. Do you have any stories where it's just like, hey, you had to go back to the trenches, really like rework your frameworks, or was it just an easy process throughout
Well,
the
I
journey?
when you look at somebody like Socrates, in philosophy, he talked
Hmm.
about how we learn every day of our lives.
Yeah.
You never stop learning. You never stop trying to improve. I always think that we can even learn from a very young child. We can learn from somebody that's in their 90s. You should
Hmm.
always be learning. And one of my favorite examples would be Tom Brady, the retired quarterback
Yeah.
of the Patriots, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm originally from New England, so I'm a
Okay.
lifelong fan, all the teams. So I was very blessed for that 20-year run that he gave us, him and Bill Belichick.
Hmm.
It's mind-boggling that this gentleman was able to go to 10 Super Bowls, win 7 Super Bowls. His statistics, it's insane. And I'm bringing him up simply because right up until the day he retired, he had a quarterback coach. And you might say to yourself, why would someone that goes to 10 Super Bowls, there's teams in the league that never even went to one in all of their existence. So why would he need a quarterback coach to talk about his mechanics? And he understood the importance of iron sharpens iron and
Yeah.
constantly polishing your craft. So I wanted to start there and just say that life is a series of falling down, picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, getting back into the boxing ring, so to speak. And hopefully over time you gain wisdom. I mean, wisdom is the most important thing is wisdom, handling the objections. This is how I used to do things. This is how I do it now.
Yeah.
You have to be confident. You can't be afraid to fail as long as you recognize what you did and how are you going to fix it and try not to let it ever happen again, so to speak. But again, no one's perfect. I may have worked with thousands of salespeople, helping them in this space, in the training and
Hmm.
coaching space. But I'm always trying to learn things. I'm always looking for an edge and other ways I can try to inspire people. So never stop learning. I have made my share of mistakes. I am certainly not perfect. There's only one person that was ever perfect, and that's Christ. So I try to do my best. I try to improve, and I try to bring out the best in myself so that I can inspire you to be better.
I love that so much. Now, speaking a little bit about these people that you worked with, help us understand a little bit more about the business, how you actually go about helping these people to, become better salespeople, better sales processes, and just make their overall system like more efficient.
Well, I practice what I preach. The majority of the clients I've worked with over the years have been word of mouth, which I love. I might be working with some folks in pharmaceutical sales and I build that wonderful relationship. And next thing you know, I'm being referred to someone that works in automotive or manufacturing. So it's always interesting. I work with solo entrepreneurs. I work with companies that only have 3 to 5 salespeople. I work with companies that have 100 to 200 salespeople. So there's so many different things going on. And again, if you can pick the number one goal, it's just trying to help everybody improve at what they do. I also like to create an environment when I'm with them that, it's all for one and one for all. And let's all share one another's successes. If I close a deal I've been working on for 8 months and I work with you, you should be extremely happy with me. And if you close something, I should be extremely happy for you. I think the best environment for a business is people that become almost like a family, so to speak. So I like to talk like that when I'm actually teaching and training. I really feel like that's the best way to go about it. But again, sort of circling back to what you just said, the number one reason I'm in that room is because they recognize a need. How can we get these folks to improve?
Right.
Maybe they're really good, but they can be great. Maybe they're good at this, but they're terrible at cross-selling and upselling. They need to be motivated. They just need to be shown how to do things a little bit differently. Maybe they're the seasoned veterans who are resting on their laurels and they're not as successful as they used to be. In the movie Rocky 2, Burgess Meredith, the trainer, was Sylvester Stallone, aka Rocky. He really reams into him and gives him the business
Mhm.
because he was getting soft, like, oh, I'm on top of the world. I don't need to train as hard. I don't need to do all these things, that type of thing. And you can't let that happen. There's always somebody going to come along and knock you off your
Yeah,
perch.
so true.
So at the end of the day, the number one reason why someone should consider bringing yours truly in is to really help change, inspire, and get people to improve in every aspect of what they do.
I love that so much. And you're definitely not wrong. I've even personally have experienced when I have those big wins and I'm gotten momentum and I'm like, oh, okay, you start smelling yourself. For lack of better words. You do for some reason, most people typically start to let off the gas, right? And I think coach Eric Thomas, he talked about the best way to kill an alligator is right after it gets done eating. And I feel like a lot of people in the sales space, or if you have, or if you are selling, that typically happens. Like you get the win, you get the glory of accomplishing getting a client, and then for some reason you take your foot off the gas. Why do you think that typically happens for people? Is it because like the over accomplishment of finally getting this thing that you've been working towards? So now you're like, I'm good, but why do people let off the gas in that consistency when it comes to sales?
I think it really has to do with your personality.
Okay.
And the good thing is that we can change. We can change our personality a little bit. And
Yeah.
I can only use myself as an example. There are some people that enjoy the journey and
Hmm.
there's some people that enjoy the destination. I enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
I've been working hard climbing up that mountain. I finally made it to the top. I planted my flag. I took a 3-minute view, and now I'm looking for another mountain. So, and then of course, there's people that just want to get to the top and just chill out for a week, pitch a tent, go through a couple of cases, and just chill. You made me think of this. When I go out and close a big deal, so to speak, I get so excited. I can't, I want to talk to anybody, the mailman, my dog. It's like, so there's two types of salespeople. There's the ones that close a big deal, and then it's Michelob time. It's 12 noon, and we're going to go celebrate for the next 6 hours. And I'm the opposite of that. I want to keep going. It's that thrill of now that I'll be able to work with this company, this client, or they're doing more or what have you. So again, it really depends on your personality. I believe that even if you're someone that does a really great job and then wants to go celebrate for 2 weeks, you can change your behavior. At least
Yeah.
celebrate for a day or so. You don't have to do it for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that would be my question. I'm like, why do you want to celebrate for 2 weeks? Like, maybe I'm that other person too. I know I'm definitely like that. It's like as soon as I get a win or accomplishment, I'm like, cool. Let me ride this high for the next one. Like, can we get another? Can we do like a bigger deal? And some people were just like, what? No, like, enjoy your victory. I'm like, I am, but mentally, I knew that was going to happen. So even though I'm excited that I closed the deal, I've like already gone through that excitement phase, so it lasts just like this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, off to the next one.
Right. No, that's the way I am. I can remember closing deals and then, you know, uh, poker face, really excited to be working with you and we'll be in touch in a week or so, et cetera, et cetera. And then get back to my car. And then as I pull out and I get out of the parking lot, I'm not within view of anyone, the quick, that's it. And then it's back to the office and back to everything else I'm doing and just trying to build
Mhm.
this empire and helping people and whatnot. So, like I said, there's different types of people, different types of personalities. And I know that if I had a sales team, I would prefer the ones that are like us, where go out, victories, okay, great. But tomorrow's another day and we got to get back on the horse. It's almost like professional sports.
Correct.
You win a big game, you come back from down 21 points in the fourth quarter. That's wonderful. But next week's another game. And, you know, what have you done for me lately and all that kind of fun stuff.
Basically, it's like, okay, awesome, get back to the line. We got the first down. We haven't hit the touchdown yet. Cool.
Right.
Let's get that accomplished.
Yeah.
As we start to round out this whole conversation, one again, I just want to say thank you so much. And if nobody's giving you your flowers yet, I want to go ahead and give you your flowers for all the accomplishments and just being who you are and being able to share your wisdom with us. If people were interested of learning more information from you and just wanting to connect, what would be the best place and location for them to find you and learn more about Art of Selling?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is Dan at the Magic of Selling Net. Dan at the Magic of Selling Net. Lots of good and useful information on there, a lot of gold nuggets as well. And also, if you want to email me, I mean, I know that most people are in this day and age texters and such, but an email address would be Dan, C as in cat, H as in Harry, 68 at outlook.com. That's Dan, CH68 at outlook.com. That would be the best way to reach out to yours truly. I'd be delighted to speak with you. I am an Olympian listener. I'd love to find out what you do, who you help, why you do what you do, and maybe there's a fit somewhere along the lines where I can help you out.
And he's not wrong. We're going to link everything below, but we had a great conversation. I felt like we were in the podcast when we talked the first time. I was like, we might as well hit record right now. It was great. But I'm going to do a rapid fire question for you.
Okay.
Some are like myths, so it's like, hey, we're going to debunk some of these concepts
All right.
together. So you can simply say yes or no, true or false, and or elaborate as
Sure.
needed.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Cold calling is dead.
No, it's
Okay.
not dead. It's not the most effective way of doing things, but it's definitely not dead.
Got you. Are some people are just born great salespeople?
Yes, there are some people that are genetically wired to be more gregarious and successful. You know, it could be the hard work they put in, it could just be the personality that they're blessed with. But the beauty of that is that no matter who you are, you can still be successful in sales if you put the work in, if you're prepared, if you study, some of the things that we talked about and so forth. So the answer is yes, that's true, but anybody could be good in sales if they have the right mindset and they're prepared.
So if a deal isn't closing, just lower the price.
Absolutely not. You don't want to be a commodity with people.
That's
I
true.
think the best way to handle that is to have some value add or added value in your back pocket that doesn't hurt the price tag. You don't want to mess around with your profit margins, things like that. One exception to that could be if you did come down a little bit in the investment price, you're willing to give me, say, 5 referrals, vetted referrals of people that you work very closely with, and you're going to go to bat for me. So, maybe you can create that type of scenario, but you really don't want to bastardize your price.
Yeah.
Come up with something of value that you can add to the table for them. So, yeah.
I like that. Yeah. And I want to harp on that a little bit more. I've found that the most successful people that I worked with and or closed, I never necessarily had to lower the price. Maybe I had to get clarity of the value and or like work them to get to the point to make the full purchase, but I would never lower the cost. I could find solutions for to make it digestible for them. So do we
Sure.
split this up, right? But the overall pricing, I found once I've done that, it's like the client, like the person I'm working with now, it's not the same. Like they're not the peak potential of the person I actually would want to work with.
Well, a lot of potential buyers, potential clients hold their cards very close to the vest, right? So, if you've done your job properly, you've connected, you've come across as a trusted advisor, et cetera, the odds are pretty good that they're most likely going to be agreeable, amicable to what the investment number might be. They
Mhm.
might like a little concession here or there, and you got to weigh that. I guess one other exception could be if you got your foot in the door with this client, big picture, it could lead to so
Yes.
much more. So then you might weigh the thought of bringing down your investment a little bit in that scenario. But that's a calculated, well thought out, et cetera. And you should have that in your mind before you go and do your proposal or what have you when you're meeting with them. Which reminds me of one other little side tip, and that is that when you put a proposal together, you should always present it in person. Now, I know that's not always possible because, I live in New Jersey, and if I send a proposal out to somebody in Los Angeles, I'm not going to get on a plane to go out there and just pitch my proposal to them for 1 hour. But if you do present your proposal in person, you have the ability to defend it.
Yeah.
They can't shoot holes in it like Swiss cheese, because you'll send it out and then all their yes people are like this and that. And next thing you know, they're trying to carve up the number and all that. So it's always best to be able to present in person when you can. And when you're taking that meeting, and let's say you're presenting to 8 people, you don't want to hand out 8 proposals. Just have one, and that's the one that you're holding that you kind of control. Everyone's going to get it at the end. But you don't let someone go into the last page, that type A driver know-it-all. Like, you just want to, you're about to do a 1-hour presentation with this wonderful information you put together, and they just go right to the back, like $100,000. That's crazy. You don't want to do that. One controlled meeting, and so forth. So anyway, just a side tip.
No, I thank you for sharing that. And that is so, so true. I can't remember, or not can't remember. I recall so many times of not being able to clearly identify the decision maker on calls. And I thought I had the person, they would take the information, then go pitch it to the actual decision maker, wouldn't get them on a call. They're like, no, I'll just tell them. And I'm like, this is not going to go.
Yeah,
They're not going to deliver it the same way or get to the key points and walk through that journey.
And that's one of the things that salespeople have to unfortunately deal with. We can't always talk to or get to the decision maker. Yeah. It's just the way that their org chart is. It's just the way their company is. So the only fallback is to try to develop these raving fan relationship inside champion so that they can run it up the flagpole. Correct. And whatnot. And what that does is we kind of lose control of the outcome. Yeah. By not talking to the decision maker. But sometimes we just never get that opportunity. But it's always best if you can talk to the decision maker. And if you're going after a company, always start at the top.
Yes.
Try to find out who that decision maker is, who they are, and see if you can't start there. You don't want to start, way down here.
I love that. One of the last questions, sales over marketing.
Well, they're both really important. I mean, you can have the greatest mousetrap on planet Earth, but if no one knows you exist or that it exists, you're not going to sell any. There are people that have products that are substandard, but they're so good at marketing, they become millionaires. And then there are people that have great products, but they're not really good at getting the word out, and, they're barely successful. And in the 1970s, we had the pet rock, which was genius.
Yeah.
The whole Barbie doll empire, which became ginormous.
Correct.
Those figures, the real genius was not just the figure, but they need the clothes and they need the house and all that other jazz. And then the marketing teams at those companies said, well, what about young boys? How can we get dollars from their parents? And then, well, we can't sell dolls to them. We got to come up with a different name. And that's where they created the term action figure. Action figure. And then the whole G.I. Joe universe took off. And Joe, of course, needed his AK-47, and he needed his Jeep. And there's the gorilla that he's fighting, and there's the monster, and there's the tower, and all this other stuff. You got to get it all.
Yeah.
And using that, the 70s was a very strange and fun decade. Along comes a guy who creates this thing called a pet rock, and it comes in this little, looks like a Happy Meal box, literally with a rock and this green grass that you would see in an Easter egg. An Easter basket when we were kids. And people just loved it. And then next thing you know, there was his wife and his little children and the swing set and all that crazy stuff. I not to digress and go off the beaten track here. The point is that marketing is extremely important. People need to know that you exist. They need to know about what you have and things like that. And then, of course, the ability to transfer that confidence and sell it is extremely important. And I feel like they're kind of two separate entities. They might be like first or second cousins, but they're kind of different entities. So the answer is they're both extremely important.
That is so true. Yeah, it's like a typical debate. It's the chicken or the egg, which one comes first. It's like they serve relatively the same purpose or get to the same ending. It's just the journey to get there. It's like you can have great sales team, you're just battling an uphill stream. But if you include marketing to it, it makes it a lot more efficient. Or if you have marketing, people want to come, but you can't get them over the finish line, which was then the sales.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The marketing team's goal in life is to try to create quality leads that the sales team can present to. And the goal of the sales team is hopefully to come up with quality leads that the marketing team was able to bring to light.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a website and there's different landing pages, and if the person continues to go through all those little portals, at some point they're going to be a very hot prospect, and now it's up to
Mhm.
the salesperson to take that and run with it. So you can see how they work hand in hand, and hopefully the marketing team and the sales team have a great relationship together.
And last but not least, sell yourself before you sell the person.
Sell yourself before you, well, people, I think my translation of that is people don't buy what I do, they buy me first. So at the end of the day, everything we talked about, everything that we discussed, did I come across as a trusted advisor? Did I come across as someone that seems to know what they're talking about? The product or service that I have, all of those different things, they're developing all that in their mind. But some of the greatest salespeople, let's say they leave and they go to another company and they're very successful at that other company. And a lot of their old clients become clients
Yeah.
of the new company because they always had that great relationship. So yes, it is true. People will buy Jermaine and they'll buy Dan before they buy what we do, that type of thing. But that reminds me of one other thing, and that is that at the end of the day, it really helps to get people emotionally invested in what you're talking about. And emotion is the heart,
Mhm.
leading with the heart. And if I can get somebody emotionally invested in what I'm talking about, then your mind, your brain decision kicks in and says, okay, and blesses it. The heart wants it, and the mind says, okay. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people emotionally invested on how we can help, how we have the better mousetrap, and we're sincere and we're genuine and we're going to get it done. And then their brain kicks in and says, okay, let's do it. Let's do the deal. Let's work together and so forth. So treat your clients like gold because that's what they
Yeah.
are. Treat them like human beings, but treat them like gold and go above and beyond. I always like to say it's the little things in life that matter the most.
Yeah.
Somebody asks me, why do I go to that bank? Why do I bank there? Well, it's not because I'm getting a good interest rate. That stinks. It's because when I pull up, the tellers give our dog a dog biscuit,
Mm.
or they give your child a lollipop or something like that. It's always the little tiny things that matter the most. So I invite you to treat your clients like gold and do things for them, surprise them.
Mhm.
You know, if they love sailing, show up one day with a little sailboat that you found at an antique shop that would blow their mind. If there's an old TV show that they haven't seen since they were a kid and they loved, go on eBay and buy it, give it to them on a sales call. It's just those little tiny things that shows that you truly care about them. That's worth its weight in gold because it's all about those long-term relationships that are genuine.
I love that so much. That being said, guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Dan, I appreciate it. We've already dropped so much knowledge, gems, experiences, but I do have to ask if there was one message, one insight that you would love to leave with the people, what would that message or insight be?
Well, I'll share with you two sayings, both of which I did not coin. One of them was Henry Ford said to Napoleon Hill in the book Think and Grow Rich, which is one of the greatest sales and self-help books ever written, in my opinion. And that saying is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are correct. So it's all about your mindset. And, if you get up in the morning and it's raining and you say it's going to be a lousy day, well, guess what? It's going to be a lousy day. Or if you get up in the morning and it's raining and you think it's still going to be a great day, you've just created a great day. And then the other saying is, whether, okay, so the past is history. The future is just a big mystery, but right now is a gift. And that's why they call it the present. And I love that saying because many people are stuck in the past, lamenting the past, wishing that we were still in the past. A lot of people are really freaked out and nervous about the future, but they're not in the moment.
Mhm.
They're not smelling the roses. They're not hitting the pause button. Like if you go on vacation, you work so hard all year, put the phone away, your ducks are lined up, everything's taken care of. The building will be there when you get back. Enjoy the fruits of your labor, enjoy your family. Just be in the moment. Be in the moment.
I love that so much. Guys, that was Dan Hollis. Thank you so much, Dan.
And this has been wonderful. I now have another brother from another mother.
I love that. Thank you so much. Till next time, guys. Cheers.
Take care. Thank you.